Have you ever felt like your memory is just failing you? Like you just can't seem to hold on to the stuff you desperately want to keep? Well, you are in exactly the right place. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to explore a really fascinating framework for memory development based on our source material. We're going to break down exactly why our brains just toss information out, how we accidentally store things the wrong way, and, most importantly, how we can actually fix it. So let's dive right in and totally transform the way we think about our own minds.
I mean, be honest for a second. Have you ever read an entire book, felt incredibly wise while turning the pages, and then forgotten almost everything just 2 days later? Yeah, you're nodding, right? It's a completely universal frustration. We consume hundreds of great books, articles, and lectures, and in the moment we're reading or listening, we feel this profound impact. We literally feel like great philosophers, like we have total mastery of the subject. But the second we close that book, the knowledge just starts to vanish. A week goes by, and maybe we vaguely remember the title. Years later, we might only recall the fact that we read it at some point in our lives. So you've got to wonder, where does all that profound wisdom actually go? Well, our source material actually has a brilliant way of illustrating this core problem. It notes that unretained knowledge falls out of our minds like things slipping through a torn pocket, lost in the dust. It's such a striking visual metaphor, isn't it? Think about it like this. You can stuff the most valuable gold coins into your pocket, but if there's a hole at the bottom, you're going to walk away completely empty-handed, and you won't even realize it until it's too late. All that amazing wisdom you absorbed from great thinkers just tumbles right out onto the ground. If we want to stay truly knowledgeable and experienced, we absolutely have to learn how to stitch up that torn pocket. And what's really interesting here is that this completely flips how we view forgetting. We usually think forgetting is this terrible flaw, right? Like nature played some cruel joke on us. But it's actually an intentional, highly intelligent feature. If we remembered every single thing perfectly, our brains would be so full that we couldn't take in anything new. The brain actually operates a lot like ocean waves. Just like a wave rolls forward and pushes the older water out of the way to make room for the next wave, our brain pushes older information deep, deep down into microscopic, atomic layers just to keep the surface area clear for new incoming info. So this whole forgetting mechanism, it isn't the enemy. It's a brilliant management system. The trick is just learning how to tell that system what not to push away. To really understand that mental management system, our source describes the untrained mind as a junk shop brain. Picture a cluttered, dusty junk shop filled with completely scattered broken parts. You've got stove pieces here, loose buttons over there, broken chair legs mixed in with hockey sticks. If the shop owner is lazy and just throws things wherever they land, finding one specific screw means literally tearing the whole shop apart. And honestly, this is exactly what happens when we carelessly toss information into our heads without a system. But contrast that with the organized brain. This is structured, logical. When we consciously assign a specific designated place to a piece of knowledge, we know exactly where to look when we need it. Boom, it's right there, easily retrievable. So the big question is, how do we actually organize that mental shop? Well, it all comes down to intent. Think about this scenario for a second. Most students can perfectly recall the exact birth year of Emperor Akbar for a school history exam. But if you ask them what year their own younger brother was born, they totally draw a blank. Why is that? Is the emperor somehow a closer relative than their little brother? Obviously not. We remember Akbar's birth date because there was a very real threat of being tested on it. We put active effort into memorizing it. There are absolutely no exam stakes for our brother's birthday, so our brain just doesn't bother to store it. We literally only retain what we actively tell our brain is important. The source actually reinforces this with another really great scenario. Imagine you take a casual, relaxed stroll through a beautiful garden. You look at hundreds of plants, vines, flowers. But as soon as you step out of the gate, someone asks you to list exactly what you saw. You'd probably just say, I don't know, a bunch of trees. You retained zero details. Maybe you remember one bright flower, but that's it. Now, imagine you go back the very next day. But this time, you know that same person is going to aggressively test you on your knowledge the second you leave. Suddenly, the fear of embarrassment changes the whole game. You look at those flowers intentionally. You memorize their names, their colors, the petal shapes. You walk out and you can instantly list every single detail. The garden didn't change at all. Your intent did. And that brings us right to the core thesis of our explainer today, the willpower to remember. Memory isn't just some passive biological lottery where some people get lucky and others don't. Well, sure, some folks might naturally have a slight edge. True memory power only works when there is active intent, deliberate effort, and a conscious desire behind a thought to prevent it from being permanently forgotten. If we just throw knowledge into our brain carelessly, it becomes junk in the junk shop. But if we deliberately tell our brain, hey, I will need this later, keep it right on the surface, it becomes an organized tool. We have to actively command our minds to hold on to the information. So how do we actually do this? That leads us to section 1, the practical solution, specifically the picture viewing exercise. To actively build up that willpower, the source provides a really specific, practical way to sharpen our retention. And the best part? It's brilliantly simple, completely free, and incredibly effective. Here's how it works. Step 1, take a single color picture. Scenery works best for this because there are lots of little details to spot. Stare at it with absolute focus for exactly 1 minute. Step 2, hide the picture completely and write down every single detail you can remember. Step 3, bring the picture back and compare it to your list to identify your mistakes. Where were your blind spots? Now, you can only use a specific picture once because the second time you look at it, you already know your mistakes. So for step 4, repeat this with a new picture, but decrease your study time. Give yourself 50 seconds, then 40. Keep practicing this day after day until you can literally glance at a picture for just 1 or 2 seconds and still write down a perfect inventory of what you saw. Now, once you've mastered the single color scenery, it's time for what I like to call the boss level of the exercise, multicolored pictures. Upgrading to complex, multicolored images completely changes the game. When you introduce color, you are creating a double workload for your brain. You aren't just remembering that there was a bird in the corner, you actually have to remember it was a blue bird sitting on a brown branch next to a red flower. Because this requirement to remember exact objects and their specific colors is so much heavier, the source material recommends bumping your starting time up to 2 full minutes. But just like before, as your willpower to remember gets stronger, you gradually reduce that time. Practicing this consistently actually physically develops your capacity to recall complex, multi-layered information right on command. So we've seen that our brains are incredibly efficient machines that will literally wash away anything we don't actively protect. We've seen the massive difference between a messy junk shop brain and an organized mind, and we've learned the exact exercise to build our mental willpower. Now, it's totally up to you. What is one piece of knowledge you will intentionally choose to remember today? Don't let your valuable experiences slip through a torn pocket. Grab a picture, start practicing, and take active control of your mind.